You're live.
Well, according to our screen, we're live. So,
Right.
welcome everyone.
Welcome. Promise not to bore you today.
Yes.
So let's see. Are we showing up live online yet?
We're
I
checking.
will see.
Stick
Well,
with
if
us.
you're here and you are able to see us, please go ahead and pop your name in the comments.
There we are. We are indeed live.
Yep, we're talking about micromanagement today.
Yes.
So if you're here, just pop in where you're calling from or where you're watching from. I always say calling, but where you're watching from, and also what city or state that you're in. So we'll give it about a minute or two, and to see if anyone pops on. And if not, we'll just keep going, and then you'll be team replay. So
Sounds good.
sounds good. All right. So if you're here, if you're watching, go ahead and pop your name in and your state or your city in the comments box. So I know we're live on LinkedIn.
Yeah, we need
Facebook,
something like that. We're like Jeopardy music or something.
I know I see 3 folks watching. I think they're watching on the Facebook side. So LinkedIn, if you're watching, just go ahead and pop your name in the comment field and what state. And we're going to honor people's time. So we'll give it another 30 seconds, and then we're going to jump off. We are going to jump off the topic. Yes, micromanagement. Yeah. All right, 3 more seconds, and then we're going to jump in, and then we'll just say, if you're watching later, your team replay. So we'll kick it off now. We'll talk about micromanagement today. And there's a reason why I chose this topic. Hi, Vivian. Hi, Stephen. The reason why I chose this topic, I'm going to put something on the screen here. So this was a post I did a few months back on micromanagement. And that post, as you can see, garnered 4,176 likes, 120 comments, and 742 shares, because so many of you resonated with that post, right? With micromanagement, the inability to let competent people own work they have shown they can do well. And I know you have a Merriam dictionary, Merriam Webster.
Yeah, I went to the dictionary, which is pretty much just saying the same thing in a different way. But according to Merriam Webster's, everyone, micromanagement is managing, especially with excessive control or attention to details.
Yes. And Vivian, yes, there will be a replay when this is done. So you didn't miss anything. We're just kicking off right now on micromanagement. So Wayne has me in the hot seat. He's going to ask me questions. So go ahead, Wayne.
So
let me remove this.
Yeah, no worries. Actually, that was actually a really good definition of it. So, all right, we know micromanagement is a problem, right? It causes certain issues. So, what are the causes of micromanagement?
Right. So
why do we get into that? Or CEOs or leaders of organizations or divisions, where does it come from?
Well, I don't know all the reasons, but I did jot down a few that came to mind, right?
Yeah.
So lack of confidence by the CEO for the team, right? So lack of confidence in the team, or there's a lack of confidence. So the CEO or leader or the manager, I guess, does not trust the team's ability.
Right.
So that's a big cause that I'm seeing, right? That this
is so the leader feels like, well, my team can't get it done, so I got to do it. So what's that old adage? If you want something done right, you got to do it yourself. I mean, is that truthful, or like
it's not?
How does that play into this?
It's not truthful, but it's truthful for leaders who still need further development. Okay. So as I remember, I used to say that too.
Right.
When I was a young leader, like, let me just do this myself, right? It could also be a lack of confidence in the leader as well, right? Sometimes leaders...
A lack of self-confidence?
Sometimes leaders feel like if I delegate something, they want to be the one that has the answers.
Right.
And so it's a weird twist, right? But, leaders sometimes feel like, let me keep the knowledge, let me keep the information. So I'm going to, micromanage this project to death, right? But but the most part, there's a lack of confidence in the team.
Yeah.
The second thing I see is lack of professional development of the team. So the
Right.
reason why leaders don't have confidence in the team is because the team isn't professionally developed, right?
Right.
They're put in a job, but they are not given the tools to do the job.
Right.
So hence leaders have to micromanage.
Well, why would that happen? Why would leaders put people in the job that aren't prepared to do the job, or
It happens.
the wrong people for the job?
Well, it happens every day, right? You hire people, you put them in a position, but the part two is to develop them for the position, right? And so, but that always comes with a training budget,
Right?
And so,
and time,
right? And mentorship, and just like an investment in people. And a lot of leaders they're on the run, and they just don't have time to do that. So,
right.
The team isn't professionally developed, and so even as the company expands and grows, the people aren't necessarily growing to meet that. So then the
Right.
leader keeps doing the work,
Right.
keeps doing the work, keeps managing the work, keeps micromanaging the work.
Well, is it because the leader doesn't have the time, or is it because the leader doesn't make the time? Is there a distinction there? Like what?
Yes. Well, yes, it's part of the problem with that is that leaders sometimes find themselves in roles or, doing stuff that they're not supposed to do. We're going to talk about it a little bit later. So they really don't have the time because their time is filled up with things that they shouldn't be doing.
Gotcha.
Right. So they truly don't have the time.
Yeah.
Because their days are maxed. But we're going to talk about really what should be on a CEO's desk, or in their workflow, and what shouldn't be. We're going to talk about it in a minute. Lack of automations and processes, right? So, for example, sometimes we're using archaic methods, right? We're double working. So, for example, there might be a system that can do the work, but we're doing double work. We're having data in that system and data in another system when it could just be one system.
Right.
So, just looking at tech and seeing how you can automate better, right? Because then it gives your people more time to do the work, right? And less time for the manager and leader to micromanage. And hey, as we're talking, if you're popping on now, feel free to put your name and your state, or in the comments here on the screen. Procrastination. Now, the procrastination, Wayne, is on the leader's side.
Right.
They're doing tasks, right, that they don't need to be doing,
right,
because they're trying not to do their big tasks that they should be doing.
Right.
So it's like an escapism, right?
Right.
So that could be a
part of it. So I'd rather keep my hands busy over here with all these little things, versus
the big things,
turning around and facing the really large tasks that require my attention, me CEO or leader attention. Gotcha.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then the last thing I have is, I have here self-sabotage, right?
Yeah.
Which is,
well, how does that work?
Is a fear of failure or a fear of success. But a lot of these are fearful of failure, right?
Yeah.
So that's why they have
I gotta do
it myself. I gotta do it myself.
Right.
And sometimes, really unconsciously, there is that fear of success. So let's keep it small.
Right. I don't want to delegate out to other people or whatever.
Right.
Because I really have a fear of maybe it works and we grow.
Right? We might grow.
And I got more responsibility.
Right. And I'm not prepared to grow.
Yeah.
So it could be a little bit of an unconscious self-sabotage.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes.
Yeah, that you're not even aware of.
Yes.
That's what's going on. That's the motive behind your actions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So if you guys are watching on, hey, feel free to put your name and ask questions too in the box, in the comments stream. All right, so what else you got for me?
So I'm going to play a little devil's advocate here,
Okay.
I'm a lawyer, so I get to cross-examine you a little bit.
Oh boy. All right. Okay.
Or, throw you a little curveball here.
Okay.
All right. So here's the deal. I know there'd probably be some leaders who would say, all right, so what's so wrong with micromanagement then, right? Or according to the Miriam's version of it, attention to details, right? Like you've heard of these leaders, they're like really zoned in on, they know every detail of their work or of their processes or of their business, and they really pay attention to detail because, that's what the customer wants,
right.
According to this theory. So what's so wrong with that then? If I'm the leader and I'm just like, I want to know that every single detail is done right.
I used to be that way too, to be honest, right? And I do believe that managers, leaders, owners, whatever, that they should really have a good sense of how the work is done, right?
Right.
But that works when you're small, right? When you're small and we're all in the same room, we're a startup. Hey, the manager, the owner, the founder, they know everything. They know they know what you know. But as you get bigger, it's not possible to keep up with the minutia, the small details. That's where you hire people so that you can continue to work on the business, work on the big things like expansion, etc.
Right. So if you continue to do that, then to work in the business versus on the business, what are some of the consequences?
It kills team morale. First of all, it kills team morale, right? Because when you hire people, you're hopefully hiring intelligent people.
Right.
So that you're hiring them and you need to empower them to do the work.
Right.
Nothing is worse than I'm working for someone. I know I have good quality, good talents and skills,
right,
but I'm not able to exercise those gifts because, man, you're always doing my work for me, right? You're always,
right.
You're not making me grow. You're not making me stretch. So that kills team morale.
Right. And it's hard to push back on the CEO or the leader sometimes too. Like, you're like, get out of my way. But how do you say that? Right.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's very hard. Stephanie's asking from Illinois, could it be that leaders who micromanage learn the behavior but never thought to challenge it and do better? It could be. Like Stephanie, I'm just being honest. I used to be that way earlier in my leadership, because I was in a startup,
and dressed up as detail oriented,
and being detail
which sounds very positive, right?
Yes, it sounds positive, and being like jack of all trades. I used to say that, hey man, I can do multiple tasks.
Yeah, I know everything about this business.
That only works up to a point, okay, and then it's just not effective. It's not efficient.
Yeah.
It misallocates companies' resources, right? I mean,
explain that. That sounds like a big word. Like, what does that mean?
Well, how are we misusing people? Your most important asset, by the way, is your team, is your people, right? And then, of course, we have, computers and we have, the tangible stuff, right? But when we step into the role of our employees as leaders and managers, it's like we're double duty. We're double working, right? We're double working.
Right.
Not a good use of companies' resources. It'd be better if we divided, right? You do leadership stuff, let me do my admin stuff, right? A leader shouldn't be doing admin stuff. I always say this. If you're a leader, a CEO, a founder, and you're doing something that your clerk could do or your admin could do, you shouldn't be doing it. Yeah. You shouldn't be doing it. Not if you have the team, not if you have the staff to do it.
Yeah.
It also creates confusion, right? And causes mistakes when it's this micromanagement. Again, we're all human beings, right?
Right.
We need to feel like we're thriving.
Right.
I mentioned last week that one of my first jobs here, I worked with a Fortune 500 company years ago when I was in my 20s. But I always loved going to work because it was a thriving, growing environment, right? I felt like when I got to work, I was going to learn something. I was going to be challenged. I was going to be empowered. I was going to be mentored. I was going to be coached. I wasn't competing with my manager who was trying to do my work for me. So it's a morale killer. It's not a good use of company resources.
Yeah, and I imagine it's also extremely inefficient.
It is.
Because then we're tripping over each other because maybe I'm working on something. I'm the worker, right?
Yeah.
And I'm working on something, but then the leader's also working on it. Then so you got two people working on the same thing. Then later on we come together. Maybe we even send mixed signals to clients or whatever, right? It can get chaotic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And another thing too, as you mentioned, and I'm going to just put this comment on the screen. It's like the whole mixed signals and the chaos. It's like, just again, think team morale. Nobody wants to work in a chaotic environment. Right. There's just no need for that.
Yeah.
Leaders lead, right? Leaders lead. Leaders don't do granular work. Not when they get to that stage in your business.
Yeah, definitely not as your job description anyway.
No.
And of course, sometimes everyone's got to get down in the weeds a little bit, get your fingers dirty or whatever the case is, handle the thing. Yes. And that's part of being a leader, but that shouldn't be like your job description.
It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. And Julianne says, love the correlation of detail oriented to the concept of micromanaging. It's all with good intent, just the need to recognize how other experiences are leading. And it's so true.
Yeah.
Julian, you said it the right way. It's good intention, because I used to be like, I'm detail oriented, like I said.
Yeah.
But you're right. How were people experiencing me as a leader? You're right. They were.
And how are they growing?
And they're not growing. They're experiencing me as a non-confident leader. That's what they did. Like, you're not confident. You're not confident in your position. Why do you have to be over here, right? Why are you watching? I feel stifled. So I wasn't being experienced the way I wanted to, right? So it's right. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. So it is again another kind of subtle form of self-sabotage.
Yes.
Because you're like basically actually tearing down your stature.
Yes.
And your effectiveness.
Yes.
You know, to your team.
To your team.
Yeah, and ultimately to the client.
Absolutely.
Ultimately to the bottom line.
Absolutely. You know? And you're right. It brings back to my last point, right? Is that it stifles growth in the company, the CEO and the leader. Remember, if two of us are doing the same job, it's a waste of opportunities, right? Because you could have been doing something else that you're strong at, right? So while you're micromanaging me over here, right?
My job isn't getting done.
It's not getting done. So, so leaders have to explore why they're micromanaging. If your team needs development, develop the team, right? To me, it's best for you to stop and spend those funds on team development so they can do the job, rather than you trying to do the job with everything else that you have to do as a leader.
Yeah. That's an interesting point that you bring up there too, Sharon, because I think sometimes the financial aspect is a part of the decision making.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That how do I invest the money? You know, I can maybe take more out.
Yeah.
Or I could leave some in and invest that back in the team.
Yeah.
So if I take it out, I enjoy it now.
Yeah.
Right. It's kind of more of a short-term benefit. But if I put it back in, then it's more for the long term. We're building a team that can scale and a team that can grow. Right. So that's part of the mindset of the leader too. Yeah.
Yes. Someone said on one of the posts yesterday, they said that someone in the comments said that leaders should really put professional development and training as part of their strategy, but many leaders don't, right?
Yeah.
It's like okay, by the way, so by the way, but to avoid like these issues, like the micromanagement, right, the burnout of your people, budget that in from the get-go. Even if you're a small company, even if you are a 3-person company, I would budget that training and development. We when we were a small practice, we always had training programs, right? Because there are things that are inexpensive that you can bring to the table for your employees. Remember, when you invest in the employees, they're going to invest back in you and the company. Yes. Right. So it's a win. Yeah. It's a win.
Yep. Well, okay. We've kind of described the problem. And some of the issues that I'm sure many of you, especially with regard to the reaction to that post.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
What is it? Over 4,000 reactions or whatever it is, probably over 100,000 impressions or more on that one post. So this is a big issue for people. So then how do you break the cycle of it? How would you help if I were the CEO coming to you? All right, Sharon, you're my coach, and I'm struggling with this. I really feel like I got to have my hands on the levers of everything, and I can see where it's causing maybe some problems, or maybe I can't see it, but someone pointed it out. Right. So I've come to you to say, is this for real? And if so, what can I do about it?
Well, one of the first things I would want to do with that CEO is to have them recognize the need, recognize that they are micromanaging. Right. And
I've got to see it first, right?
They gotta see that they're micromanaging first, right?
Yeah.
And usually, they don't. Yeah. So usually, so the question is, how do you get a CEO to realize that they're micromanaging? And it goes back to this question that I would ask. If you're doing tasks that can be comfortably handled by anybody else on your team, you're probably micromanaging. Right. Yeah. So that's like if it walks like a duck, it looks like you're probably micromanaging. So why are you doing that? Why are you doing these smaller tasks when the company would be better served if you're working on the bigger things that only you can do.
Right.
We're going to show a chart, with some ideas, with that, I'm going to actually put up a chart real quick.
Sure.
And you all know the Stephen Covey's chart, right? Quadrant activities. And so we popped some stuff in this chart just for you guys to look at. So if I'm working with a CEO, we all know there's 4 boxes, right? Urgent and important, not urgent, but important, not important, but urgent, and of course, not urgent.
Neither urgent
right?
or important.
Which we gotta eliminate. So if I'm working with a CEO who's micromanaging and who is just having issues with their team, all right, I'm going to say, hey, let's categorize your work. There are some things that you just have to handle, like that it's deadline driven,
right?
An emergency. You're about to lose a client or a donor. That's an emergency, right? A last minute prep for a big presentation or a pitch or whatever.
Right. But that's not your life.
But that's just the emergency, right? And that's true urgent that you cannot delegate those things to a team member. Pressing issues, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, this is going to impact our bottom line, impact our people, impact our team if it doesn't get done.
So fire that the CEO or the leader has to put out.
Exactly. You have to put out. So, by the way, while we're talking, guys, if you have a question, please feel free to just post it in the comments, or if you have some feedback, we'll be happy to listen to that. Where the CEO wants to spend his or her time is in the not urgent but important category.
Right.
Business expansion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Turn the focus on business expansion, professional development for self and for team.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Because it's important.
It's
right?
important.
It's really, it might be detrimental and not like really crucial.
Yeah.
But it isn't urgent.
It's not urgent.
If the CEO doesn't get some coaching or go to a class, or if Bob, the manager of this department, doesn't get trained tomorrow morning, the company is not going to crater, right? So, and that's the problem with those things.
Yes.
It is really, really vital that Bob get that training, because Bob is like running your people out of the, people are quitting based on Bob.
Right.
But because they're not quitting tomorrow, you put it off.
You put it off.
Right.
But that's where, a CEO could redirect his or her efforts, right?
Yeah.
Performance reviews, and I'd like to ask the audience this, even if you're watching on Team Replay, does anyone do performance reviews anymore? I mean, I remember as a young, as a career person coming up, not only did I do performance review, as a leader, I gave performance reviews.
Right.
I think people just give raises nowadays without reviews, but reviews are so important because it validates the employee's work.
Yeah.
But this is a non-urgent but important task, right? Performance reviews, long-term planning, long-range planning, long-term planning for your company.
Mm-hmm.
Client cultivation, donor cultivation. These are the things that your admin cannot
that
do.
Your admin is not going to do for you, right?
Your admin can do other things, but they cannot do that for you.
Yeah.
The branding of your messaging, how is that?
Right.
Is that changing? Do you need to work on your branding? Do you need to work on your messaging?
Right. Because the CEO or that leader is the spokesperson, right? The founder or the CEO is a spokesperson.
They're the brand.
Yeah, for the organization and for the brand. And so who else is going to wear that hat?
They're in charge of it, Wayne. They're in charge. And last but by no means least, self-care, right? Caring for self, caring for health,
right?
Creating your proper boundaries, creating the white space on your calendar, making sure that you have those white spaces.
Yeah.
So when you micromanage, you're creating up your white space with tasks that can be handled by someone else.
And I want to say to some CEO who's going to watch this or is watching currently, or maybe you're not a CEO, but you're leading a division of a company, that, look, you can plan that in. You see, you can be intentional. That's what the quadrant 2 box is about.
Yes.
It's about those things that are vital and important to your company. And even self-care should be planned in. You should look ahead, plan it in, and then execute on it. Because your health, I forget, we were watching Damon John speak, the shark. And he was saying that old proverb that a man who is healthy has 1,000 wishes. A man who is ill has one.
That's right.
Right? And so your health is your wealth. And so it's important too, team, that we block that in. We plan that in, because our self-care is just as important as, the longevity of the company.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hi, Eva, and hi, Stephen. So we're talking about micromanagement, and how we can help CEOs, leaders, and managers from stop micromanaging. So we're talking right now about, the quadrant, Stephen Covey's quadrant activities, right? So obviously in box 1, yes, they have to prioritize that. And number 2, yes, they need to spend time there. And if CEOs are spending time there, CEOs, leaders, managers, then they don't have the bandwidth and the time to micromanage. Right. And Stephen says, no, performance reviews serves as an opportunity to discuss the relationships and pivot the most successful path forward. Stephen, I'm a big believer in performance reviews. I just don't see it a lot anymore, but I'm a big believer. And that's the kind of activity that a leader or a manager, should be spending some time getting back to the basics.
Because again, you kick it down the road.
Yeah.
But it's one of those kind of long-term things that has such a profound effect on the morale of the team.
Yes.
Right?
It does.
So it's impacting you in the long term, but it's impacting you today too.
Yeah.
Because if the person doesn't know that they're valued, or they feel like you're just kicking the can down the road because you either don't want to raise them, or you don't want to promote them, or you don't want to develop them, or whatever, you're literally sending your best people elsewhere.
Yes.
Yeah.
I challenge leaders and CEOs, managers.
Yeah.
Like if you're not doing performance reviews, ask yourself why. Sure, you may be giving raises, right? But because it's quick. But how does that person know how they're doing? Yeah. And then what if your competitor does performance reviews? And what if the people who they're hanging with in their trade groups and in their, they're saying, man, I got my review yesterday and I got a 40 out of a 50 or whatever. And then you realize, man, I haven't been reviewed in like 5 years or 4 years on my company. What is my worth? I've gotten a raise, but I've gotten no communication on my performance. So I would just encourage, again, CEOs, managers, leaders, instead of taking time doing the tasks that admins can do, the quadrant 2 box is where you want to spend time. Now, here's where you don't want to spend time, right? Not important, but it's urgent. So CEOs and leaders and managers get trapped in this box.
It's a temptation.
Unscheduled meetings. Okay, can I meet with you?
Yeah. Hey. Interruption.
Yes, I'm all for an open door policy.
Right.
I do. But then there's limits, right? There's got to be boundaries. So knocking on the door and unscheduled meetings popping in, that's urgent but not important.
Yeah.
Responding to emails all day long. As they pop in, you're responding. No, you want to schedule that too, right?
Right.
Phone interruptions. Sometimes you got to put on do not disturb, or have it be routed through your secretary, your receptionist, or someone else.
Right.
Right. And dealing with other people's problems all day long. We want to have a time for problems, right? But this is the reason why I said last week on last week's live, if you guys haven't seen that one, if you have a team of 4 employees, right, or 5, make one a manager. Invest and make one a manager and start delegating stuff to that manager. Empower and equip that manager. Yeah. So you're not still handling 5 people's problems.
Right.
Paul said performance reviews are very important as we can become so busy and bogged down in make sure you have time each week or month to catch up and make sure goals.
Yeah, that's important too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a great point.
And Eva said lots of managers micromanage because of the fear they will lose control, insecurity, inexperience, or maybe they just want to stay connected to lower level tasks. That's right, Eva. And I know Eva came on a little bit later, but Eva, when this is done, go back to the top of this recording because we mentioned those very reasons that you mentioned, the insecurity, wanting to stay connected to the lower task for self-sabotage reasons. So there's a lot of reasons why they're doing it, but we need to look at it though. And we need to identify, and we need to help other leaders identify. Yep. So, and then here's the box. So the box, the box I just mentioned, the number 3 box, which is this one down here, is you need to delegate that box. Delegate, right? Now you need to eliminate this other box, which is not urgent and not important, but it comes your way, and that is social media scrolling in the middle of the day. Look. It's tempting, right? A lot of us get our leads on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn all the time, but we have to discipline ourselves that we're not on LinkedIn for every notification.
Yeah, we're looking for the dopamine hit. The
likes and comments. We need to manage that, right? Yep. I know people who are looking at sports updates. Right. And I know it's a way to
football season.
Yes, to ease your brains or whatever, but that's not urgent. It's not important.
Yep.
Candy Crush and other online games. I mean, I know for sure I had team members in a company that we worked at, that we had, that they were always on Angry Birds or Candy Crush. And I know, again, it's a way for them to, check out, but that's not for a leader, right?
Yep.
And there are other time wasters. I'm a big believer in taking a lunchtime or taking an hour in the day and getting a pause.
Right.
Even take a nap.
Yeah.
Right. If you have to
get a reset
so that you can come back and work in box number 1 and box number 2. The urgent and important, and not urgent, but important stuff. Stephanie says leaders can also use performance reviews to get direct feedback from individual employees to help improve individual performance, group processes, workplace culture, and overall organization performance. Yeah. Stephanie and the others who commented on the performance reviews, I hear you. And I'm so glad to see that other people are believing in that performance review culture. Something that I see that's really been missing of late, Wayne.
Yeah, don't run away from it.
Yes. So those are my boxes, guys. Those are the boxes that we have here for how where I think you're better served as a CEO, manager, or leader than playing out here in a granular, which we, doing stuff your admin can do.
Yep.
So delegate low-level tasks to assistants. That's why they're there. It's called assistants, right?
Right.
They're there to give you help.
Yep.
And, create documented systems and processes that means that teams can easily follow. We all know that documentation and processes are key in running an efficient organization.
Yep.
And
someone should be able to come in and pick up
and sit in the chair and just do the work
and do the work. Right.
Yes.
There's a system. There's something to follow.
Yes.
And if you don't stop and take the time to do that, then you are forever perpetuating chaos, or confusion, or you're sort of putting out a fire every day. And that's one point that I wanted to make earlier, Sharon, when you had the quadrants up. Folks,
yes. You want me to put it back up?
No, that's okay. You could let it ride. If you spend the time in quadrant 2, right? Those really important tasks that are not urgent, they're not on fire. Quadrant 2 takes care of quadrant 1.
Yeah.
You see, when you spend the time in quadrant 2, it will lessen. I'm not saying you'll get rid of all emergencies. That's the nature of an emergency, right? Or a pressing deadline. They'll come up. But when you spend time in quadrant 2, you definitely chop down quadrant 1. You'll be putting out less fires when you review people, when you think long-term, when you develop yourself, et cetera, right?
Absolutely.
Less problems in quadrant 1 when you spend more time in quadrant 2.
Absolutely. And, look, it almost looks like we're always bashing leaders, but you know what? Leadership is everything.
Yeah, we want to get better.
Everything. It's everything. The country needs a leader. I mean, the world needs leadership. I mean, your company needs a leader. I mean, and leaders have a special responsibility.
Yes.
Without leaders, where would we be, right? Without someone leading and in charge. And that's why leaders shouldn't, they should not use their precious time and gifts doing stuff that other people can do, right? And I know we have a John Maxwell fan on the call with Miss Eva, a John Maxwell coach, but I think it was Maxwell who said and I know I've probably heard it from you, that if there's 5% of a leader's job that only the leader can do, right? 5%, 95% of the leader's job anyone else can do. But it's that 5% you need to spend that time in that quadrant 2 over there doing your 5%, doing that 5%. So we're gonna take maybe one question and then we're gonna wrap it up because we don't want to be on here too long. But if there's any questions or feedback, pop it in. We're gonna give you like 10 seconds, and if not, we're gonna just say goodbye for today. Yeah. And if you're a team replay, you're watching this after 4:30 p.m. Eastern. Just hit hashtag team replay. Any questions, guys? All right, so we're gonna leave it for that way for right now, and we will see you next Monday, as we call it, CEO Talks. Yeah, and drop in the comments any issues you'd like to see covered, or maybe in your company, or maybe something you're struggling with, or you'd like some reflection on. Just drop it in the comments. That's right. Take care. Ciao.